Under the heavy, soot-choked skies of the industrial district, Rowan stared at his cracked hands, knowing another day of endless toil awaited him. The towering gears of the brass mills ground down his youth, yielding nothing but a handful of coins and a weariness that seeped deep into his bones. Reaching deep into his worn pocket, his fingers brushed against his entire fortune, a single, crumpled 200 rupee note. Rowan muttered to himself, "Is this all my life is worth? Just a scrap of paper?" Seeking shelter from a sudden, heavy downpour, he slipped through the heavy oak doors of a silent, forgotten municipal archive. From behind a towering stack of leather-bound ledgers, a young librarian stepped forward. Hana tilted her head, observing his wet clothes, and whispered, "You look like a man who has walked 1,000 miles just to find a quiet place to think." Rowan let out a heavy sigh, shifting his damp coat, and said, "I'm just trying to escape the rain, and maybe the life I'm trapped in." Hana gestured silently toward the deeper, darker corners of the library, where the oldest and most neglected manuscripts rested in peace. Stepping into the shadows, Rowan's eyes were drawn to a strange, threadbare volume bound in tattered green linen with gold leaf lettering. The cover read, "The Law of Cascading Value." Hana walked over, her soft footsteps echoing, and murmured, "That book has been waiting for someone desperate enough to understand it." As he opened the fragile pages, a gentle scent of vanilla and ancient paper filled the cool library air. His eyes caught the handwritten preface, detailing how the truly wealthy never trade their time directly for sustenance. Hana looked down at the diagram and said, "Wealth is not built by labor alone, Rowan. It is built by creating a system that multiplies the labor of others." A spark, long thought dead, suddenly ignited behind Rowan's eyes as the simple logic of the formula took hold of his mind. The next morning, Rowan walked out of the mills for the very last time, leaving behind the safety of a miserable but certain wage. Holding his sole 200 rupee note, he walked into a dusty wholesale market. He whispered to himself, "This is not just money. This is the seed of my entire future system." Instead of buying food, Rowan purchased raw linseed oils and fine pigments, realizing that craftsmen constantly lacked prepared materials. He brought his humble supplies to a small wooden table. Hana sat across from him, checking her watch, and said, "Now we build the pipeline that the artisans didn't know they needed." They worked through the cold night, preparing premium-grade wood finishes that would save local carpenters hours of prep time. Rather than selling the finish himself, Rowan left the jars with local workshop apprentices, offering them a small share of the profit. An older master carpenter scoffed at them and muttered, "Why should we trust a dirty factory boy and his fancy little jars?" Rowan took a step forward, his voice steady. He looked the master in the eyes and said, "Because my finish will dry in half the time, letting you double your daily output." By the end of the week, those 10 jars had sold out, transforming his initial 200 rupees into a small pouch of silver. Instead of spending the silver on comfort, Rowan immediately reinvested every single coin back into larger barrels of ingredients. Hana looked at his worn shoes, her eyes full of concern, and said, "You are still walking everywhere, Rowan? Do you not want to buy yourself something nice?" Rowan smiled warmly, adjusting his coat, and replied, "If I buy shoes today, I stall the engine. The book taught us to feed the pipeline first." Within months, the small home workshop could no longer contain the growing river of jars, boxes, and orders. Rowan hired several former factory colleagues, paying them double what the mills offered, immediately winning their loyalty. Standing before his new crew, Rowan raised a jar high. He shouted, "We are not just workers here, we are partners in a system that feeds us all!" As the seasons turned, the small local business blossomed into a sprawling network of community-run workshops. Rowan's system eliminated the greedy middlemen, allowing local craftsmen to earn far more while keeping his distribution running smoothly. Hana looked out the office window, seeing the bustling yards, and whispered, "Look at what you have built from that single old green book, Rowan." Rowan stood beside her, now wearing a fine wool vest, and replied, "I did not build this alone. Your belief in me was the real catalyst." The dark, soot-covered mills that once threatened to crush his spirit were now completely dwarfed by his clean, ethical enterprise. Rowan returned to the Grand Municipal Library, not as a cold, shivering beggar, but as its primary financial patron. He placed a small wooden box on Hana's desk. Hana opened it to find a key as Rowan whispered, "The library's future is safe. Forever." With tears glistening in her green eyes, Hana looked up and said, "You didn't just escape your prison, Rowan. You tore down its walls." Together, they placed the ancient book back on its dusty shelf, ready for the next lost soul who needed its wisdom. For true power does not lie in the accumulation of coins, but in the systems we build to elevate our fellow man. Rowan looked back down at his hands, once calloused by chains, now strong with purpose. He smiled and said, "It only took 200 rupees and the courage to change." And so, the legacy of the forgotten book lived on, proving that the greatest fortune is always the knowledge we share.